been a long time, but welcome to another episode of the Dental Review Guy. I'm going to talk about something which a lot of you have been asking me about, but there's a reason I did not review this much sooner. And what are we talking about today? Let's talk about loupes, okay? And you know we've spoken about loupes quite a bit in the past, and today I'm going to be talking about the Design Vision 4.5x expanded field panoramic loupes. Now these are what you would consider maybe one of the top of the line loupes you could possibly get. Now I got these loupes actually 2 years ago, and in 2 years I didn't review it because I wasn't comfortable reviewing it until this point. Okay, so let's talk about everything there is. Firstly, let's go back to my old loupes. These were the 3.5x Design Vision. These are Galilean, they're not prismatic, so they're not so heavy. They're actually very light, very sporty. I still love these loupes, and I just thought I needed an upgrade with a little bit more magnification. Now that's where these guys come in. So these are the 4.5x expanded field loupes, and this gives you a really panoramic view, but there is a couple of trade-offs when you talk about the expanded field and the panoramic and the 4.5x and the fact that it's prismatic and not Galilean. So one of the issues is the weight. It is a very, very heavy pair of loupes, and it does take some getting used to. And what happened was I bought this during the pandemic, and during the pandemic we had those N95 masks on which would cover the entire face, and because it covered the entire face, I would not really feel the weight of the nose pads on the mask or on my nose, because there is the N95 mask in between the loupes and my face. And then the pandemic, it reduced in intensity, and so we went back to a regular surgical mask. And then when I started wearing these masks, I then started to have a problem, because the nose pad started to press down right over here and create a lot of force, and it was extremely uncomfortable to wear. So much so that I just stopped wearing it for about 4 or 5 months until I decided, it's probably the right time to talk to customer service. What you're seeing here is actually, this is a cover on the original nose pad. So the original nose pad actually is much smaller, and this is like a silicone cover which is fitted over the original nose pad. And once I did this made all the difference for comfort. So even though I was using a regular surgical mask, once I fitted these silicone covers over the existing nose pad, that actually gave me a lot of comfort, and I did not feel the force over here. Design Vision, if you're listening, I think you should make those silicone nose pads default with every purchase, because it's really not easy to use loupes which are this heavy without using those silicone nose pads. So I had alluded to earlier about the weight. So it is quite heavy, and it is not possible to use these loupes without a lanyard. You have to have a lanyard over here so that you have something to tie in the back when you put these loupes on, because if you just put these loupes on without anything and you tilt down, because of the weight, the loupes are going to fall. So you must have that security in the back to tie it against the back of your head so that it stays in place while you're working with it. So one of the biggest differences between the new pair and my old pair over here is the magnification. Of course, this was a 3.5x and that's a 4.5x, and so it is a lot closer, it's a lot more magnification. But I think the better, or the reason why I prefer the newer loupes nowadays, is because it also is the expanded field or the panoramic view. Because of that panoramic view, what happens is I'm able to see a lot more of the field which I'm working in, whereas if it was just a regular 4.5x, I would probably end up seeing less than a 3.5x, because you're kind of more zoomed in as you increase the magnification. So with my old pair, I tended to avoid these when I was doing surgery, because in surgery you need a little bit of a wider field of view rather than in prosthetics, where you're prepping a single tooth and you just need to see that margin very close up. But surgery, you need to reflect flaps, you need to suture. All of those things would make me avoid the old pair, but because of the expanded field of view in the new pair, I'm able to really use it for surgery without too much difficulty. So overall, I'm liking the new loupes better. But let's talk about the light, okay? So I am still using my old Design Vision Nano light, and this one is something which I preferred, and I did test out their newer model, which is called the daylight model, and I did find a couple of issues with it. The reason why I stuck to the older light was I found that the newer light was a little bit more yellow. The old model, which is the nano light, seemed to be, at least to me, it seemed to be a little bit whiter in terms of color, the color temperature, whereas the newer light is a little bit more warm and appeared more yellow, and I found that a little distracting to work with. A second big difference is the battery pack. This is the old battery pack for the nano light. This one I like a lot more. It's a little more compact. The newer one is a little bit taller and a little bit skinnier, but the big difference here is this button over here, which is a projection. You can very easily turn it on and off by just using your wrist. If it's on your belt, you can just use your wrist over here and you can do that, and you can turn it off without making any contact with your gloved finger. I found that a little bit harder to do with the newer battery pack, and the main issue for me was really coming back to it was that warm color. Now some of you may notice it, some of you may not notice it. Sadly, the older nano lights are no longer available, and the older battery packs are no longer available with design supervision. So if you're investing in this system, you will have to stick to the new one, but I strongly recommend that you try it out. Your mileage may vary, you may like it. I just didn't like the color of it too much, and that's why I stuck with the old light. So besides that, can I recommend these loupes, which is the 4.5x design supervision panoramic extended field loupes? Can I recommend it for a beginner? I would say absolutely not. These are not beginner loupes. These are loupes where you've used another pair for maybe 2 or 3 years, you've gotten used to them, and you're trying to upgrade and you're trying to get something better. I would say this is for you. But if you're a beginner, stay away from these loupes, because it's going to make things very difficult for you. You're going to have a lot of strain trying to get used to these loupes. Now, are these the lightest, most comfortable pair of loupes? Also absolutely not. They are heavy for a reason, and that's because they provide you with astounding clarity. They are extremely clear. You can see everything. There's nothing you're missing. But again, there are trade-offs. Like for example, this you cannot one hand and put it on. Yes, you can put it on, but now you need both hands free to tie it up in the back. And versus in the old pair, you didn't really need the lanyard. You could just put it on, and because it's kind of a stretchy frame, you could bend down and it wouldn't fall down. So that was a big difference. You can't do this. You can't do the new pair with one hand. So a little bit of these trade-offs here and there. And there is a learning curve. The new pair definitely has a learning curve. It really took me 2 years to make this video, and that tells you that, you know, there are certain adjustments, and the higher you go in magnification, the more you're looking at weight, and the more you have to get used to it, and it's something which you just have to stay persistent. A very important decision, and I've spoken about this in earlier videos, is when you're buying a pair of loupes, look at the customer service. And I have to really commend the Design Supervision India team. This is represented by Modi Medicare. These guys have been fantastic, because I had a whole slew of complaints and they attended to them one by one. So a real big shout out to them. I'm sure the other loupe manufacturers are also great, but make sure that you have customer service available in your city, and especially for those first few months when you're still getting used to your loupes, you need to make sure that you are able to reach the company for that service and support which you need. I'm going to close this video by saying something important. I have met many dentists in my career, and I've met a lot of dentists who don't wear loupes, who are excellent, and also I met a lot of dentists who don't wear loupes who are also not so great. You can see that there is something lacking in their clinical skill. On the flip side, I've met a lot of dentists who wear loupes, and all of them are excellent. So if you are looking to get your work to an excellent standard, I highly recommend loupes should be one of the first investments you make in yourself. Till the next time we meet, take care and have a nice day. This is the Dental Review Guy, signing off with a smile.